Hey everyone, really excited to be with you here today. I'm going to share my screen. All right, that was probably the most seamless Zoom share I've done to date. Well, thank you, WayUp, for having us and for facilitating this session. Really excited to talk with y'all about our inclusive interviewing process here at Expedia Group. Um, I am pinch hitting today for Mikkel, who's supposed to be with us, but Mikkel is under the weather today. So you've got me. My name is Brendan Streif, and I lead the early careers recruiting team globally at Expedia Group. Mikkel is one of the recruiters on the team and was really excited to be here. So I left his photo up here, and he's based in Chicago. I'll do a little introduction there. He wanted to be here, but unable to be here today. So as I mentioned, we wanted to host a session to talk with y'all about, spend a few minutes talking with y'all about our inclusive interview process, how we think about in being more inclusive in our interview process here at Expedia Group, and how mentorship plays a role in that. And then what we'll do is we'll finish off the session talking a little bit about talking a little bit about what's on your mind, taking questions from y'all. So Brandon will help me facilitate that. So without any further ado, we will jump right in. So I wanted to start off by sharing with y'all how we think about inclusivity in recruiting here at Expedia Group on the early careers team. We think about it in three ways holistically. So the first is representation. So as we go and we interact more with underrepresented groups, underrepresented students, and when I talk about underrepresented, I mean traditionally underrepresented in tech. And I talk about that because we really are eager to bring more students into our tech roles, into Expedia, but generally into the tech space in general through our recruiting process, through our opportunities. So we're going to spend a lot of time with, we want to spend a lot of time with folks who are part of the traditionally underrepresented groups as we go and recruit. And so in order to do that, be inclusive of really everybody in the recruiting process, we want to make sure that there's representation. So that's not only, you'll hear some companies talk about making sure that their interview loop, so their group of interviewers is more inclusive, and that's important. We want you to see yourselves in your interview panel. But we also want to make sure our teams are represented. So my team is very diverse. We have we have almost every underrepresented group in tech represented on my team. And I'm really, really proud of that. That's intentional because we want to make sure that you are seeing yourselves in our team and in the recruiters that you interact with. Also on campus. So when we're on campus and engaging, we want to bring people on campus who represent all those identities that we're looking to bring to Expedia Group. And then aligned with how other companies are doing things, we definitely want to make sure that as best as possible during your interview with us, that you are seeing yourself in that interview. The second pillar here is access. So it's important that everyone that we interact with feels as if they are supported by Expedia Group. And I would challenge any company that they are making sure that you're feeling accommodated. So through our interview process, you'll have the opportunity to let us know of any accommodations that you need. We also will provide mentorship in our interview process. And this is something that we're looking to expand year over year. But this year, I'll talk a little bit about how we're thinking about bringing mentorship into our interview process. And then also you'll have support from your recruiter, from the recruiting team, and from the support team that we have here at Expedia Group, who's helping support the interview process. And the last pillar is equity. So we want to make sure that everyone gets the same interview process, the same processes as they come through and work with us. And so because of that, we're going to be really upfront with you as you go through the interview process with Expedia about what that process is going to be for you. And as a result of that, quite honestly, sometimes it may take us a while to get back because it takes a long time to process the thousands of applicants we get each year. We're going to try to get back in touch with you as soon as possible, but we'll be upfront. We'll be clear with you. We'll be equitable about how we do that. We also are taking an equitable approach on compensation. So based upon the role you'd be interviewing for or getting with Expedia, whether that's an internship or a full-time role, depending on the location as well, and then depending on the specific role type. So if it's an engineering role or a data science role, we do offer the same compensation to everyone. I'm sharing that because we don't negotiate our offers, and we don't do that because we do make an equitable offer to everybody. We want to make sure that no one's disadvantaged through that process by being a better negotiator. The other thing is placement. So we're looking at ways to make the placement process to our internship and full-time roles more inclusive. And what do I mean by that? So if you were to receive an offer from Expedia Group prior to joining, we go through a pretty extensive process to place folks on internships and full-time roles. So placing them onto their team. So we're looking at leveraging technology to make that more and more inclusive, to make sure that you get matched with a team that not only best fits your skill set, but best aligns with what it is you're looking for out of the experience. So to take a double click, I want to talk a little about mentorship in our recruiting process and why we feel like that is a direction that we want to take and lean a little bit more into this season. So we know that mentorship makes an impact through some research that we've done, through some partners that we have, and some data they've provided back to us. So to start on the left here, through a couple of our partners, we've learned that 90% of learning happens informally. So I'm sure many of y'all who are just heading back to school can attest to this, that while I'm sure you learn, some of y'all learn really well in a packed, very large hall with your classmates. Most of us gain most of our learning through informal measures, informal means. So what do we mean by that? We mean through mentorship. We mean through that chat you have with a colleague or a fellow student where you're getting help on an assignment or on some content. And so knowing that, we also wanted to understand how underrepresented students in tech were prioritizing making decisions on employment opportunities. It was really interesting to hear from one of our vendors that 82% of underrepresented students prioritize career advancements and skill development when deciding between opportunities. So we said, wait a minute, if informal learning is a lot of where learning happens, and that happens through mentorship, and wait a minute, more folks, we want to bring in more underrepresented folks. 82% want career advancement and skills development. Well, wait a minute, maybe we should think about how we bring mentorship then into our process and show that that's something that we take seriously, because it is here at Expedia Group. We don't want to just hide that for those who, sort of come into Expedia and find out when they get here. So we wanted to put that in our interview process. So we went even further, and we talked with another vendor of ours who does some work with mentorship with a lot of employers around the US and in Canada. And they shared with us that of early in career employees surveyed, 22% don't know who can give career advice. So I'm sure many of y'all may be feeling the same way. 20% aren't sure how to reach out to a senior colleague or even what to say to them if you did reach out about mentorship or development. And this alarming is that 61% are concerned about lack of community amongst peers. So peer mentorship is a really big thing and a big opportunity. And so, we saw this as an opportunity here in thinking about and evangelizing mentorship through our entire process and coming into Expedia. The last thing that we looked at, again, as we were talking with some partners about this, was there's this additional point of data, which is really interesting to us, is that 54% of students said that being assigned a mentor would impact their decision to accept an offer at a company. And again, this is based on some surveying that this partner did. Furthermore, 72% of students said that being assigned a mentor after receiving an offer would greatly impact their perception and positively impact their perception of a company. But the alarming thing that we found was that 0% were actually receiving those mentors that they so desperately wanted or that would make a positive impact. And so we see a huge opportunity here. We want to fix this for y'all. So the way that we did this, being a tech company and wanting to iterate through, is that we want to start slow on this. We want to involve mentorship in our process. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about how we're going to do that. And then each year we're going to look to bring more and more mentorship into our recruiting process. So our interview process is as follows. It'll start with student engagement. Events like this, where we're engaging with students like y'all on campus, through messages directly from the WayUp platform or through LinkedIn. We're looking at a lot of different ways to engage with students. We'll then invite students to apply to our roles. We'll then review resumes. And then for those that pass a resume review, and to be clear about the resume review at Expedia Group, we're looking at some very basic things here. We're looking at, do you meet the requirements regarding graduation dates? So we have thousands of applicants that come in each year. And of those, there is a high percentage of students who are applying who are underclassmen. Currently, our internship opportunities are only for those who are graduating in December 2022 to spring, summer of 2023. And our full-time roles are for those folks who've already graduated up until those who graduate in summer of 2022. So the biggest resume reviewers or knockout of that review will be, do you meet those sort of basic requirements? And then also some requirements around work authorization. Are you eligible to work in the US, that kind of thing. So the resume review isn't super extensive regarding that, over and above that. And the reason for that is we want to bring as many students into our online assessment as possible, again, being more inclusive in that process. So post-online assessment, our team will take a look at resumes a little bit deeper and start pulling people into the final round of our process. And prior to the final round, you'll be invited to join an interview prep session that also includes about 30 minutes of mentorship, group mentorship, with somebody who is in the role at Expedia Group that you're interviewing for. So if it's a product manager, we'll have ideally a recent grad do some mentorship with the group, or it could be a more senior level product manager. And we'll offer these sessions a few times a week, every week throughout our interview process, throughout the season, so that regardless of when you are asked to take your final round interview and you're contacted with us to do that, you'll have the opportunity to go through that mentorship session. Then you'll take the final round interview, and then following the final round interview, we'll be assessing candidates and making offers rather quickly, within a few days, within a week or so of getting that offer. We'll communicate with you through that entire process. And then we don't stop there. Again, as I mentioned before, we have opportunities for mentorship at Expedia Group once you've joined. And I just wanted to call those out. So we have our internship program, which I mentioned before. That's one of the major opportunities that we're going to be interviewing for. Through that program, you'll have opportunity for mentorship within the team you're interning with. You'll have the opportunity for mentorship from our early careers team. You'll have opportunity for mentorship from your peers and recent grads that you will meet across that program. And then our Expedia Group graduate program, which is a year-long program for software engineers, product managers, program managers, analysts, and design folks that we're bringing in. You'll go through its rotation. It's a year-long program. There's 2 rotations of 6 months. There is a 2-week boot camp to start off the program. There'll be opportunities for mentorship, again, within your teams. And then we have designated roles within the organization to mentor this group in particular. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And this is tied to our full-time opportunities. So as a full-time employee, you would, under any of those role profiles, you would go through this. Also, we have inclusion business groups at Expedia Group. So a lot of companies have what are called employee resource groups. This is our version of that. But in particular, these focus on, we have a group for LGBTQIA. We have a group for Black and African American employees. We have a group for Latinx employees. We have a group for Indigenous employees. My background right now, and I'm sorry to mention this before, but my background right now is aligned to in support of our Indigenous group. World Indigenous Peoples Day was August 9th. And so we have a number of inclusion business groups, and we have senior level leaders in those groups. We have early careers talent just started with us in those groups. So there's opportunities for mentorship within those groups. And then encompassing all those things, we have an Expedia Group global mentorship program that got started this year. And I'm really excited. My team's going to work really closely with them to start analyzing tools, what tools we should be using to make sure that that program runs really smoothly and is the best possible program across all of Expedia. And so I'm really proud of that program. So these are the kinds of things that you'll see coming into Expedia Group. The thing I would leave you with here is part of being, and something we take seriously, part of being inclusive is also making sure that we're transparent. And so you've heard some transparency from me today. One thing we'll be sharing out after this event are these two links. And this is a link to our inclusion and diversity page at Expedia Group. This is an external page that you all can join or visit to learn more about what we're doing around being an inclusive and diverse company. And then this year, for the first time, we published our diversity report. And this is something I would really be eager to have every one of you look at and explore. And this talks with you about our goals for being a more inclusive and diverse workplace, and then how we're doing against those goals. I'm really excited about this because, again, it brings that transparency. Are we reaching all of our goals where we want to be, in years from now? No, we have a ways to go. And we want to be transparent about that and show where we need to improve. And so I'm really excited about that. Our inclusion and diversity team put that together, led by our chief inclusion officer, who sits on our executive team and brings inclusion and diversity to the top of our company's mind every single day. So really excited about that report. I would urge you to take a look at that. So without further ado, let's get to some Q&A. So Brandon, I'll pass back to you.
Thank you so much, Brendan. This won't get confusing at all.
Brandon and Brendan, yeah.
So great. We have a lot of questions that are coming in, a lot of great questions. So thank you all. And for anybody that does have a question, feel free to submit that in the Q&A section. If you put it in the chat, it's going to be a lot harder for us to keep track of. So please put your questions in the Q&A section. But with that, so our first question comes from G2. My apologies if I mispronounced your name. You did touch upon this in your presentation a bit, but what work has the organization done to become more diverse, inclusive, and equitable? And in what areas do you see the work being reflected so far?
Yeah, so there's a lot. I think it's hard to find a point to start with. I would really recommend that you go pick up the diversity report to get a more inclusive or more robust answer to that question. I think from a recruiting lens, what we're doing is we're trying to, as I mentioned, we're trying to hire and build a team here internally that looks like the people that we want to hire, right? It reflects the people that we want to hire into Expedia Group. So being intentional about that. I think the other thing is, we've hired and in the last couple of years brought in a chief inclusion officer to drive things like this diversity report. This is something that I know he was passionate about from day one. The other thing, as I mentioned, is mentorship. So the global mentorship program actually sits under our inclusion and diversity team, and the person who manages that reports directly into our chief inclusion officer. And that's important because we know that learning and development, as I mentioned before, 90% of our learning and development will come from these informal sessions. And so we don't want to ignore that. We don't want to just throw training at folks and hope that it sticks. We want to make sure we're supporting our employees through mentorship and taking that seriously and making sure it's as inclusive as possible. And then there's a number of policies and things we put in place internally about how we communicate with each other. We use SharePoint as a mechanism for sharing content across the company, and there's multiple SharePoint pages about how we can communicate through decks like this, through how we communicate with each other internally, and with things as little as file sharing, to how do we think about setting up meetings. We went through a training recently on how to be more inclusive of folks with disabilities. We have one of our IBGs is the Ability Inclusion Movement. My team has brought the leader of that group in to learn how we can be more inclusive of folks with disabilities through our recruiting process in early careers. I feel like I could go on and on for a long time on this. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, read the diversity report. I'd be happy to have an offline conversation. This is an area that I'm really passionate about. I hope that comes through. It's 6 o'clock on a Wednesday for me. I've drank as much coffee as I can to keep my energy levels up. But I hope it comes through about how passionate I am about the space. Um, in order to be the best version of ourselves, we have to be inclusive of all identities, of all people, and we have to think about how bringing more diverse perspectives, and that really aligns to diverse backgrounds into our company, into our conversation. And I didn't touch on it here in particular. One thing I would challenge y'all with is the real way to do that, in my belief, and I think Expedia is doing a really good job on this, and everybody I talk to inside of Expedia, we're all aligned, um, is by building community. So as you're thinking about being a champion for inclusivity and diversity, think about how you're building community at your school, at your organization, because that's where it starts. I've had some conversations with folks who are part of our inclusion business groups about this exact thing. And the conversation keeps coming back to it, is that we can only do so much internally at Expedia. We have to get out into the community and we have to make strides in the community. So it's more about that in our diversity report. Again, I could talk ad nauseum about this, about things we're doing now and about things we're looking to do into the future. Thanks for the question. And again, happy to take it offline, happy to take a LinkedIn connection and have a one-off conversation on it. Anybody wants to follow up.
Well, I gotta say, that was a great answer. And for anybody that wants to learn more about the diversity programs at Expedia Group, I posted both links in the chat so you can find the inclusion and diversity page along with the inclusion and diversity report. So both of those links are in the chat. Feel free to check those out if you want to learn more. But great. This is going back to those pillars you were talking about. And Harsh, again, my apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, wants to, as asking, can you elaborate more on what you mean by making an equitable offer?
Yeah, so what I mean by that, Harsh, is we look at compensation sort of against what the industry norms are, and we make an offer that we feel like reflects the best possible offer that Expedia Group can make. My team advocates strongly for that to be the most competitive offer that we can make, aligned to each of the roles that we're hiring for. And I can tell you on the conversations we have with our compensation team, we don't pull any punches. And so when we think about that offer, we're thinking about, again, a competitive offer that aligns with market, but we're also thinking about who it is we want to bring in. So I'll give you an example on this is, our offers will include, for those folks who need to relocate or need housing, for instance, for an internship program, we want to make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible by giving an offer that is, that provides as much support as possible for everyone. And so what we found in the past is that providing students a lump sum, for instance, to relocate isn't really super inclusive, because not everyone has access to hundreds or thousands of dollars to put a down payment on housing for the summer or fly themselves in. So my team advocates for, and we're going to put forward for our internship program, is a relocation package that would be inclusive of housing, and everyone who would need that, who isn't local to the office, would be able to take advantage of that. And so it's things like that where we're creating a competitive offer, but thinking about how every aspect of that offer promotes inclusion, allows us to hire more diverse talent. And then to the last part I mentioned around negotiating is, I sit in this data and in these concepts all day, every day. You all may or may not know, but allowing for the opportunity to negotiate mostly favors groups who are supported and trained on how to do that. And that tends not to be underrepresented groups, just to be really frank and clear about it. And so what we do as part of this whole process of being inclusive and diverse on our team, is we don't negotiate those offers. We make a really, really inclusive offer and a really competitive offer to the best of our ability at Expedia Group. And that's the offer that we present to our students. And so I think that's something that's something that we go and do. Other companies do different things. It's not to say they're less inclusive necessarily, but it's a direction that we're taking of we put together a really inclusive package, and we're going to stick by that. And yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Our next question is coming from Lennox, who is asking, what is a key thing that one needs to keep in mind when applying to an internship or full-time role at Expedia?
Yeah, Lennox, great question. I just had a conversation. We had a program go on this summer, with some students who are earlier in their development, and I was able to be a mentor to one of them, and I'm continuing that mentorship conversation. And I was having this conversation with her today, and I think a couple of big things, and this should apply, I would imagine, to any company, not just Expedia. But the first thing is make sure that you're reading the requirements. Our job descriptions are actually pretty lengthy. I think we could probably do a better job of simplifying them. But there's some real basic stuff in there. If you don't meet the requirements for our graduation dates, then just expect that you can apply, but that you may be, as we say, dispositioned out of that process, right? You may be declined out of that process. That's one. Also, if you need immigration support that doesn't align to what we're doing there, and we try to be as transparent about it as we can on our job adverts, then I think that's another one. So just be aware of that. Do we offer immigration support? We do. We do align to very specific requirements. So for instance, this is just that one example, but if you're applying to a software engineering role, you need to be studying computer science or computer engineering to be considered. And the reason for that is, and I'm going down a rabbit hole here, sorry, but the reason for that is the US Immigration Service is really, really critical of folks who are applying to roles and getting roles that don't align to their degree type when it comes to these visas. And so you have a much higher chance of not getting that visa, and we don't want to put anybody in that position. So we really try to work with folks who are aligned really well on that. So I think some basic requirements. The other thing is, to be successful through the entire process, is we spend a lot of time with our students on some very basic, for instance, from an engineering perspective, computer science principles, data structures, algorithms, coding, problem solving. And then we do behavioral interviewing aligned to the STAR method, or the SBI method, which is really aligned to giving an example, a situation you were in, an action you took, and a result that drove the results that sort of you drove through that example. I bring all this up because I think those two or three things, 3 or 4 things, on a very basic level, will help you be successful through almost any interview process. And what that is, again, is making sure you meet some very basic minimum requirements just to make it through the process. Making sure that you understand the fundamentals of the role that you're applying to. And then the last thing is that you are thinking about your experience as it pertains to the role, and then what you can bring to that role, and doing some minor preparation as you have conversations with recruiters, as you have conversations with interviewers. And then the last thing is, be humble. Everyone on this call very likely will have lots of opportunities for jobs. I hope you do. We are doing a lot of hiring at Expedia Group. A lot of companies are doing a lot of hiring. We expect to be very competitive this fall. But be humble, bring your authentic self each day and each time you interact. And I think that'll take you far, whether it's through our process or others. And if that doesn't answer the question, if you have further questions, as we get through these questions, we can come back to it. Or again, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to have a conversation, Lennox.
Perfect. Well, the latter part of that answer actually kind of ties into a few questions that we've gotten from the audience. So kind of just to mash them all up, people are wondering, what does the online assessment and final interview look like? And what are you looking for in a candidate?
Great. So the online assessment, speaking very generally, will fall into one of 2 tools that we're planning on using. So it would either be through HackerRank for coding, and that will likely align to our software engineering roles and potentially our data science roles. And then the other tool that we're using is HireVue. It's a video interviewing platform. It allows us to sort of populate some interview questions on the front end, allow you all to answer those in your own time and get those back to us. I want to just call out, we are aware that video interviewing is not the top of your list of things that you love doing as candidates, as students, and from that, I want to just extend my thank you for your patience there. It is a way for us to be able to engage with a lot of people at a high volume. We are looking for ways to address that or do things differently in the future, but this year we're gonna use those platforms. So for any non-coding roles, we probably use that. I think it's HireVue that we'll use, which will be sort of like an online assessment that asks a few questions and maybe has a bit of telling us about yourself. Our team will review the results of either of those. From a HackerRank perspective, we are looking at, I don't know what the passing score per se is, but we're looking at people to meet a certain threshold. And the same thing with HireVue. For each role, we'll sort of look at a threshold there. And then for those people who pass through that, we'll look to bring folks into our final round interview process. I'm going to make sure my team is really clear about this. That may take a long time. We get tens of thousands of applicants. And as I mentioned before, we're going to try to pass pretty much everybody through to that first assessment. So everyone has a shot at least getting their name in throwing their hat in for these opportunities and having a chance for us to assess their capabilities. So it may just take us a while to process through all those assessments. That may take a few weeks to do that. The final interview process will generally follow 3 interviews. So it'll be 2 technical interviews and 1 behavioral interview. For roles like product management, maybe program management, maybe design, there may be like a portfolio review, or there may be like a case study or something. We'll be very transparent about that on the up front as you sort of get into these roles and are interviewing. So we won't sort of, there's no intent to show any surprise, to have any surprises through this process. That was the first question. What was the second part of the question, Brandon? I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. No, I mean, you did a great job answering that first part. Now, the second part was essentially just what are you looking for in potential candidates that are applying to these roles?
Yeah, we're looking for candidates who are really interested in joining Expedia. Now that may sound like a sort of a silly thing. Well, if I'm applying, of course I'm interested. But you'd be surprised at the number of candidates we talk to or hear from who don't think about their own, their own unique way to bring that enthusiasm. And I would encourage you to think about that. Not all of us are extroverts. To be quite frank, it takes me a lot of energy to come talk with y'all. I naturally am not necessarily an extrovert. I am outgoing a lot of the time, which Kate and Brandon can attest to, but I wouldn't say I'm an extrovert. So not saying you have to, even necessarily wear a suit, that you have to, put on a smile and all those things. Be your authentic self, but think about how you can show any company that you're engaging with, especially here at Expedia Group, that you are really interested in the role. And you can do that by researching the role, networking with people at Expedia Group, maybe some of our interns who've been here in the past, understanding what the company does. I think I've given you some resources here around inclusion and diversity. So that's one thing you can do. I think the other is understanding the strengths that you bring to the table and having some examples of those strengths prepared in that STAR methodology. The STAR thing is much more about, it's a great way to think about clearly articulating your experience. And for those of you who don't think you have much experience, you might be right in a professional setting, but you've got experience that got you into university. You've got experience at university, and all those experiences are really valuable. And so think about that time. If we're asking about a time when you struggled, and you needed help, for instance, I'm not saying that's a question we'd ask, but maybe it is. And how you, how you leaned in to others to sort of to gain their help and that kind of. You do this all day, every day, right? You go into a class and there's a professor might be intimidating, and you have to get help from them or from your peers. Think about that. So be able to talk about the situation, the actions you took to solve these problems you're faced with on a day in and day out basis. And then what was the result? And then what you learned from that. And I think it comes back to what I mentioned before, being humble. be authentic and be clear about where you were successful, and when you weren't successful, what you learned from it and what you do differently next time, or maybe what you did do differently next time. I think all that really that will help you to articulate yourself through the interview process. I don't want to skip out. We of course are looking for folks who are um, technically talented, who have the some baseline experience that we're looking for, understanding what we're looking for. I don't want to dissuade anybody who's on this call from from taking a technical assessment. There is no harm in taking those technical assessments, because you're going to have to take them at some point. so, so try them out, test them out. I have to say, HackerRank, who we use, sign up for an account. They have a lot of resources to get prepared. I was pretty amazed. I went in there recently to try to find some stuff to send out to some folks, and I signed up for an account myself, and it's amazing how much prep material they have in there. So if you haven't seen that, go check that out. And I imagine the same thing. I think HireVue has similar kinds of resources. So, do what you need to do to get prepared for those things. And yeah, so I think those are some basics things. Again, if you have any further questions, I don't mean to encourage. There's 112 people on this call, 112 LinkedIn messages. May take me a while to get through. But if you want to reach out, please feel free to. Happy to try to get back to you. Please be patient with me. As you imagine, this is our busy time, but yeah, would be happy to have you reach out to me or anybody on my team.
Great. And yeah, for those interested in reaching out, I posted Brendan's LinkedIn link in the chat, so you can go there and add to that building inbox. But great. Playing off of that last question, with regards to the interview process, Datsing, again, I'm so sorry for butchering that. Where do applicants usually struggle in the application process, and what are your tips or suggestions for that?
The first place is the technical assessment. And whether that be HackerRank or whether that be a HireVue style where we send some questions and do a video interview, and what we hear is the source of that struggle tends to be confidence. And I'll tell you from experience that one way to address lack of confidence or nerves is called the 5-minute rule. The 5-minute rule is for those of us who are procrastinators or who are nervous about stuff all the time. I'm one of your people. I'm here with you. Is to just get to it. Commit 5 minutes. So for the instance of HackerRank as an example, take 5 minutes, sign up for an account, go into that platform, and just start clicking away at some of the training and see where that takes you. Because you'll be surprised what 5 minutes leads to. 5 minutes usually leads for me into 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour of deep thought and deep engagement in an activity that I may have been nervous about starting in the first place. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is in the final round interview. Just a quick anecdote. I'm definitely going to overshare here, but my son just had an accident and went through surgery, and he's fine now. But he was nervous going to a follow-up appointment with the doctor. He was nervous about surgery. I'm not trying to relate interviewing to surgery by any means, but for some of us, it can be like that. You're going to be nervous, and that's totally okay, right? In fact, if you weren't nervous, that's cool too. But nerves are natural. But you can prepare for that. You can prepare for that, like the HackerRank stuff, like the pre-assessment, by getting in and testing it out. So a couple different tips I've got for you on that front is, one is do your research around what companies are looking for. So Expedia Group will tell you about our values. So at the very least, you can think about how do I align to Expedia's group values and come up with some examples of ways that you can share with us about how you exemplify our values. That's a very, very easy one regarding like behavioral interviewing. When it comes to technical interviewing, you can look to your classes and other things for examples. But and then the other thing is thinking about your examples, but then practicing them. So grab a peer and have them interview you, and you interview them. I can tell you, I promise you, every recruiter you've talked to has done this exact exercise, or at least most of them have. It's a role playing exercise. It's how we get good at being recruiters. It's either that or we just jump into it. We start talking with candidates. Either way, we're playing the role of recruiter and we're trying it out. And so the point is get in there. Experience is going to help break down those barriers. And we're looking at ways to how we bring more of that preparation to everybody here. I think we're making a little bit of stride with the mentorship like stuff this year, but we're going to look at more ways to do that over time.
All right, great stuff. So, and I can personally recommend the practicing interview with a partner. It helps a lot. It feels awkward, but you struggle through and it makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's much better to struggle through something with a friend than it
with a
can be with
hiring
a
manager.
stranger sometimes. So
So true. All right, next question comes from Eric, who is asking, as someone who loves to travel and has used many of Expedia Group's products, I wonder if Expedia Group offers any incentives or benefits regarding travel for its employees.
I swear I didn't ask Eric to ask that question. This sounds like one of those things that we are very much guilty here at Expedia Group of one of those. The first questions we ask everybody. It's intro questions: state your name, your role, and what's your favorite destination. Right. So travel's in our DNA, of course, as well. We absolutely do offer. We offer every year. We offer every one of our full-time employees. Interns are not don't have this the full extent of this anyway, but our full-time employees have access to a travel stipend. So we have everyone gets a few $100s a year for the purposes of travel. When the pandemic hit the company, we consolidated that lump sum amount of money with a benefit that we have a lump sum amount of money that's usually equates to the travel benefit for wellness, and we just made it one bucket. So if you were able to travel, you could even have even more money to travel. Of course, very few, if any of us were. So a lot of us were able to spend it on wellness. But yeah, there's that benefit. We also have unlimited coupons for 20% off hotels. I can tell you those are excellent. I took a road trip with my family this summer, just a few weeks ago, and we use that all up and down the East Coast, up and back. Used the heck out of those coupons. We also have, I think it's 5 at a time, friends and family, maybe 5 annually, friends and family coupons that we're able to give out as well. So those are a few of the things. Gosh, I feel embarrassed. I don't think I'm missing anything. I think those are really the basics of it. There is one other benefit we have. I haven't taken advantage of myself. Basically, as Expedia employees, we're able to get access to a travel agent. For those who even know what that is, I feel like travel agents are sort of a thing of the past in a way, but a travel agent ID card. It's not available in every market globally, but in the US it is. And that will allow you to get discounts really across the industry, booking airlines and all sorts of things, hotels. I've got a guy that used to work for me who would sort of walk up to the front desk at a hotel and let them know he was there. He'd bring a box of chocolates and he'd flash this card and he would say, "Is there any opportunity for an upgrade?" He was a real schmoozer, and you would be surprised at how many times he got upgraded to the premium suite. So that's another pro tip. Bring chocolates. It helps with airline flights. It helps with hotels, and that card doesn't hurt either. But he was really, yeah. Anyway, that's a tangent, but yeah, those are a couple of the benefits that we have.
Some great travel tips. I'll keep those in mind. Our next question is coming from Crystal, who wants to know, what career paths does Expedia offer?
Yeah, great question. So I realized just as we were jumping on this call and Brandon introing that I probably didn't share enough about the roles that we're going to be opening. So grab your pen and your paper, your notepad on your computer. There's 5 sort of core what we call job families we're going to be hiring into at Expedia Group. And then there's some nuance within those job families, but software engineering is one of those. So we have sort of a software engineering generalist role that will open up. You'll see on our website in early September. It's called a software development engineer. We'll have internship and full-time opportunities for those roles. We're also going to have a line to the engineering job family. We'll have profiles aligned to security engineering and data engineering, machine learning engineering, UX engineering. Those will come sort of shortly after the software development engineer, or SDE, role that we open first. We also have roles for product management, for program management, for data science aligned to analytics, as well as machine learning. So we've sort of re-architected the way that looks, and we talk about that inside of Expedia Group as data science is the job family. And then there's the role profile of data science analytics. And then there's the role profile of machine learning scientists. And then we have roles aligned to, so I've covered engineering, product management, program management, data science. And then the last job family is design. So those roles will come last, but what they'll look like are roles for user experience design, user experience content strategy, and user experience research are the three roles underneath there. For every one of those, for almost every one of those, there may be some nuance here, but we hire those in the US or North America. We hire those in Seattle, Austin, and Chicago. We have a few of those roles that may sit in Denver or in Montreal. For those in Montreal, you have to be eligible to work in Canada. We don't provide visa support, so I just want to call out if anyone's like, "Wow, it'd be really fun to go to Montreal for the summer." No can do, unfortunately. You got to be based up there to be eligible for those, or have a work permit. The career paths for each of these things goes internship and then a full-time role. And then this program I mentioned before, the Expedia Group graduate program, of those role profiles I just talked about, pretty much every one of them is going to be a participant or going to be eligible for and go through this Expedia Group graduate program tied to this full-time role. So if you think about it from a career path, you'd be an intern and then you'd be a full-time employee, and the full-time employees coming through our program all go through that Expedia Group graduate program. The only exception is data science. And the reason for that is we hire a lot of PhD and master's students. And so we're looking at a bespoke offering for them that's more aligned to what we need and out of those employees, and still offers development and support. That graduate program is a year-long program intended to accelerate the career of folks going through it. So we've seen in the past that someone coming into a level 1 engineering role, for instance, it takes them about 18 months to 24 months to get promoted internally. It's sort of the average. And there's outliers, I guess, on both sides of that. But we said in building the program, well, we want to accelerate. And the business asked us, how can we accelerate people from this entry level into the next level? And so that's what that graduate program is intended to do. It's intended through those rotations to provide you with that front end boot camp, with mentorship and development within your team, but also ongoing training, so that after 12 to 18 months, again, some people might need a little bit extra time, that 12 to 18 months that everyone gets in and through and gets promoted to that next level. And then from there, in the future, we're building out an acceleration program, name to be determined, that would be focused on accelerating from that sort of level 2 role into level 3 in leadership roles, and on and on and on. So we really are taking career development very seriously, and there's lots of room for opportunity. There's lots of opportunity for career advancement here at Expedia Group, and I really encourage all of you to take advantage of that and apply to our roles.
Perfect. So this is a common issue coming from Avery, and they're asking, many job descriptions have requirements like, quote, 3 years of experience, quote. For those right out of college, can we still apply to these positions or look for specific new grad positions? So kind of asking that age-old question, how do you land that job that asks for X number of years of experience when you're graduating and need that job to get the years of experience?
So, oh man, I feel like I could spend a long time talking about this too. I'll try to be concise and simple about it, but shame on companies who are looking for a fresh grad and require you have 3 years of experience. That's unrealistic. I would really recommend that everybody start their career search with those roles that are really designated as early careers. I can tell you from my peers, there are hundreds of companies looking for early in career talent, interns and grads. you shouldn't have a hard time finding. I'm gonna, several of you can certainly ping me on LinkedIn and tell me I'm wrong later, but unless you have a really, really, really focused career trajectory you want to go on, you probably shouldn't have too hard of a time finding that entry level role. If you are having a hard time finding that entry level role, then in the company that you want to apply for has like a level 1 role, for instance, and they're requiring a few years of experience. I think this is where networking comes in. But I can tell you at Expedia Group, our entry level roles are clearly marked that way. I think at most tech companies they are, because we want to address that. We want to make sure it's really clear which roles you should be applying for, and which are really designated for those folks who have more experience. So I would say any role that says 2 to 3 years of experience, I would generally say that's probably not the right fit. It's probably not really intended for you right out of school. But if you have determined that are really passionate about developing programs or products for whatever bespoke thing, and the company you really want to go work for only has an entry level role that says 2 to 3 years, get out your sharpen your networking skills, find somebody to network or help you mentor into that organization, and go that route, if that's really what you're gunning for. But I think we're seeing less of that, and I can tell you that what keeps me up at night is that you all will have just a plethora of opportunities this fall, and that there's more people getting into my world in regard to recruiting y'all than ever before. And so I would imagine that you shouldn't have a hard time finding those entry level designated roles that are really more aligned to the career path versus the set experience at a time.
All right, thank you so much for that. So moving on to Alexander, who is asking, what makes working for Expedia different from any other company?
I want to tell a little story in part in my language, but I had this guy I used to work with, used to sit next to me. He's just this real wonderful gentleman. And he had a saying, and I think as a going away gift, he left the company a few years ago. We got him a mug that said it, or a T-shirt that said it. But the message was, "We don't hire assholes," and he would say that to candidates. He would say people would ask a similar question, and what sets us apart is we don't hire assholes, and that's again, that might not be the right thing to say, but the point I'm trying to make is there are very few people. I interact with hundreds of people across Expedia Group, and there are very few who aren't humble, who aren't just really genuinely wonderful people. And that makes working so much less feel like work, which is really important when you're doing hard work. It's really important when you're passionate about the work that you're doing and you need and want support from your peers and from your company to work with great people. It might sound cliche, but it's really the people here at Expedia Group that make working here fantastic and are as a differentiator. There are other tech companies that are going to tell you the same thing. I think maybe not. But I think that's genuinely a thing. I would really encourage you to find the place that you feel most comfortable, and engage with those people where you feel like you've made a connection, because you'll just be so much happier in that situation in the long run. It'll also help you explore your career more easily. So yeah, a little piece of advice, a little answer to your question. We hire great people, and it's fun and exciting to work here because of that. We also, not to mention, there's a ton of really wonderful work we're doing to transform travel. but that's all a moot point if the people you're doing it with aren't great to be around, in my opinion. So, and they're great to be around.
Solid point. I love that saying, by the way. I want to get that on a mug. So moving along then, this is more of a logistical question, but I've had a lot of people asking, They want to know when roles are going to be live. Is there a timeline for when roles will be live?
Yeah, y'all, we're trying to get this done as soon as possible. My heart aches for every one of you who wants to come and work for Expedia. When I see other companies saying, hey, our roles are live, there's a lot that goes into that. And we're in the process of trying to staff up our team right now to support all the hiring we're going to do this fall. So thank you for your patience. We do expect those roles will be live the week of we'll start launching roles the week of Labor Day. So September 7th through the 9th, 10th. Then roles will be launched sort of over time. And I want to give some nuance to this is, and again, might be oversharing, but as we are scaling our program, last year we hired about 600 folks, again, probably oversharing, but this year we're going to very likely hire over 1,000. We have tens of thousands of applicants. That's not to pat ourselves on the back. It's just more to talk to you about the volume we're going through. What we found in the past is that launching a role with a job description, it certainly feels good on the front end, and it will feel good to you to apply. But what really makes you feel good is when you can hear back from us quickly, and that messaging is crisp, it's clear. You get to hear back from us very quickly, and you understand the process, and it feels like a human's talking to you. I'm not going to sort of BS anybody here. We there is automation we use. We use that, but we want you to know that we care about you. And so what I'm not going to do, and what our team's not going to do, is we're not going to launch roles until we're ready to bring you through the entire recruiting process. So if you're a software engineer on this call, that'll be first up. And then from there, we'll get into some of the other engineering roles. We'll get into product management, program management, data science, analytics, design. For those on the call who are business majors who may feel left out so far on the dialogue, thanks for your patience with me, but we do have business roles coming. Those roles will be aligned to finance, HR, some sales roles. Those probably won't be live until the end of the fall, or maybe even into the spring semester. So just be more patient with us on that. We're very early on in those discussions with the business, so I don't expect those to launch until probably later this fall. But the majority of our roles will be launched from a tech perspective. The tech roles we're hiring for, which is the primary roles that we hire for here at Expedia, aligned to the job families I just told you about. Those will be live starting throughout September. And we're going to rush to get those up as soon as possible, make sure we have a really functional working process so y'all can get through that quickly.
Perfect. All right, we have time for one last question. So kind of going alongside when the roles are going live, Avery wants to know, what is your timeline for hiring?
Great question. I would have loved that we had all our roles filled yesterday. I'm sure that might be cliche too, but so we are going to open our roles that week of September, and we are going to get thousands of applicants within the first few weeks. So as much as I'm saying be patient with us, also be vigilant. Apply as soon as you see those roles posted, and we'll do our best to message you. Everybody who's been part of this call will get that opportunity to be messaged and sort of get access to those or have awareness to those ahead of everybody else. But please look to apply. Keep an eye on our website and apply quickly. We will keep those roles open until we've reached the number of applicants that we need to fill the roles. What do I mean by that? Well, we certainly have had tens of thousands of applicants in the past. It doesn't feel great to be one of those applicants and take your time through the process and then get dispositioned or get rejected because we filled our roles, right? And so what we want to do is we want to try to, as best as we can, be able to assess how many applicants we need to fill the number of roles that we have, and then cut off that application stream at that point when we have enough. If the application stream doesn't meet those requirements, we will keep the roles open. I think our goal right now is November 1st is when we will shut all of our roles down. And then our goal is to hire and finish hiring, reach our hiring goals by the end of November. So sort of close off applications by 1st of November and finish everybody through the hiring process by the end of November. In the past, we've gone into December. So if y'all know anybody who interviewed with us, I definitely acknowledge it's gone into December. For those roles I mentioned in the business, it will go through the spring. We very likely will be hiring into the spring. But we want to make sure that those people who have spent their time applying, that they get the due diligence on our end, to make sure that we are reviewing and that we're giving you the time of day for the assessments that you're going through and reviewing your resumes and stuff. And I know we're over time now, so I'll cut myself off. But yeah, that's generally sort of some timelines there for you. I think once you've applied, it could take 4 to 8 weeks to go through our process. I don't mean to scare anybody. I hope it's not. It's just to be honest, again, with the volume, it just may take some time. But 4 to 8 weeks at the max to get through that process. And I think if you sort of think about it, align that to the calendar I just gave you of when we're launching and when we're closing, it's sort of aligned to that, right? Some people will get to earlier, some people it'll take a little bit longer to go through. But that's what we're looking at committing to. So as you apply, you'll hear more from us about that.
All righty, thank you so much, Brendan. Well, with that, we are a minute over, so I'll throw it back to you to close this out.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for participating today, and I want to thank WayUp for your partnership and bring this opportunity to y'all. Having the opportunity to engage with you. Just as a plug, we are going to share with you through this channel an opportunity to engage with and sign up ahead of our roles going live. Sign up through our interest form. So we'll make sure that the WayUp team gets that out to you. We'll get that out to you. Those who sign up for that interest form, we'll get that first. As soon as we launch our Recs, we'll invite those folks to apply to those positions. And so just be mindful of that thank you for participating and saying you're interested. We want to make sure we're keeping you at the front of the line, getting into this process as soon as possible so that we can streamline that for you and get you through as fast as possible. Thanks for taking time. I want you all to make sure that you're aware that you've just now invested an hour in your career development, and that's important. So whether it's here listening to me or listening to my colleagues on other companies, this kind of investment is really invaluable. Whether you learned one thing today or whether you took a lot away from what I said, continue to invest in engagements like this. It will only help your career. And then I guess the last thing I would say is good luck this year in school. I'm keenly aware, I have a student who is just starting high school. I'm keenly aware of the challenges that y'all have been facing in the last couple of years. And my heart goes out to you. And I hope you have the best year possible. Bear with all of us who are trying to figure our way through as well. Give us some grace. And I promise you we'll give you grace as well as it comes to our recruiting process and engaging with us. But give each other grace as well in regard to getting through this time right now. And at some point we'll get back to whatever normal looks like on the other end. Probably won't be really normal, but it'll be whatever it is. And yeah, be kind to each other. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. Have a great semester, and look forward to connecting with you later.